Boom, we are alive, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. We've got a quick little update. We're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin, the inflows and outflows from the ETF, as it appears to me that there's still large amounts of accumulation going on. We'll look at a few of the altcoins that are out there just to get a little bit of a better pulse on the market, and we'll end with the S&P 500, which just flew off into highs since the election. So on the chart now, you will see Bitcoin. This is the 6-hour chart. This shows the most recent accumulation range. Seems pretty clear to me now. We've seen a spring, a test, our first LPS, our second LPS, and we're into the SOS and upthrust phases of this market. Generally, once you break outside of the box, there's very little room. Accumulation takes a very short kind of dive into the top of the trading range and then just basically goes straight up. I think the run from here to $100,000 is actually going to be very quick, but there's going to be some LPS ranges along the way. Let's say we go to 88,000, dip down from 88 down to 80, and then up to around 100 down to 92, and up to 130. And it's going to happen very quickly. We had used gold in the past as a marker for this. Right now, as you can see, once gold broke out of the back end of its trading range, and this is a decade long, so it's much longer, but what I'm focusing on is this particular portion of the trading range here, which is where Bitcoin is when we look at this chart, this one here. So we're in this horizontal accumulation range right at the back of a multiple year reaccumulation range for Bitcoin, something like this, similar to the cup and handle response. I think the SOS is going to take us probably upwards of the $130,000, $140,000 area, but Bitcoin always surprises and always has a little bit further to go than we would normally suspect. So something to keep in mind. But here, this shorter trading range, I think, is equivalent to the previous kind of SOS and backup range of gold. And as you can tell here, as soon as gold left the trading range, as we zoom in, we had a slight little touch that brought us back to the top of the trading range. But very, very little time did we spend at the bottom of the top of the trading range before going into full SOS mode. So I suspect we're going to see the same thing here for Bitcoin. We're going to see a little backup phase that comes into the top of the trading range and then just goes straight up and out. There's not going to be a whole lot of supply that tests this, but generally once you leave the range as an SOS, you break out. Now there are times when this could turn into upthrust and turn into distribution, but I'm going to show you why I don't think that's the case. Number one, we can start with some of the most recent news coming here on Google. On the investing side, BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF is now larger than its gold ETF. Launched in early 2024, IBIT is over $34 billion in assets compared to gold, which is $33 billion. IBIT launched earlier this year, while gold launched nearly 20 years ago in 2005. There's an extreme amount of demand. Oh, sorry, hope that's not too loud. There's an extreme amount of demand for Bitcoin. Again, just compared to gold, that's absurd. You know, you've got 20 years in the gold ETF here, and just a year in Bitcoin, and you see these massive accumulation moves. So we'll take a look at what that looks like in chart format. Here from Apollo, if we zoom in here, actually I'll zoom in. This is just the last few months, but large net inflows of accumulation, daily ETF inflows, actually one of the largest days we've seen in a very long time. On the day of the election, this is usually not distribution when you see this type of accumulation chart. This is usually accumulation. And again, as you can see in the past, they've only been accumulating. So basically, since the launch of in January 17th, all you've seen is large accumulations with very minimal outflows, although we do see some outflows that aligned with some of the bigger drops that came into Bitcoin. The majority of this, to me, looks like accumulation, not distribution. If we see, on the other hand, instead of, again, if we look at the ETF here on the right-hand side, this is basically just growth and accumulation. This is not. We see no change in trend towards the downside. We only see change in trend toward the upside. So I suspect that that's going to continue. I think that it's pretty clear now. And this is usually the favorite point of the market for me, is when you've finished the test in the spring, you're just leaving the box at the top of the trading range, you get a little bit of time to enter your final positions, and then it just goes batshit crazy. Again, as gold is kind of a nice example, as we zoom into this trading range, again, once it left the box, it tested the box and it just went for a run. So with gold here, you could have saved yourself 1,690 days of annoying chop that was about approximately 10% on either side, and simply enjoyed all of the upside of the 40 or 50% that was there in only the 300 days. So I find this is much more enjoyable than watching the markets all the time, which is why I also don't make videos every day being like, oh, the markets are going to go up, the markets are going to go down. It just doesn't help in the mechanism of trading or investing. It's better, in my opinion, to just invest all the time, or wait for very specific breakout moments like this where the market's level is the highest confidence with the least amount of effort. So going across the board here, just for fun, I wanted to take a look at Fetch, scroll into some of its timeframes here. Should have drawn this up earlier. This also looks like a form of reaccumulation to me. We saw distribution, and now I think we're witnessing a inverted head and shoulders. This also looks like accumulation, which is going to then break out. I found this across multiple assets where once we hit the top, we've gone down into reaccumulation. SUI is another interesting example, although this is on the 15-minute. I should have had all these charts ready, but you know me, I'm very not organized for the moment. But take a look at SUI here since August, effectively. This is always one I like quite a bit as well, which are these falling accumulation channels. If you've been part of the bear den for quite some time, you'll know I'm a big fan of this falling channel. Breakout, test the back of the channel as the SOS and backup phase, and then straight into bullish momentum. Now, there's a lot of reason to believe that this could be distribution, but I actually think that this is a reaccumulation pattern. It's not super clear yet, but this looked like a spring to me, followed by an SOS, and we're currently in the backup phase before going much higher. I think SUI's got a lot of momentum here, and we basically just tested the previous bottom that we had all the way back in 2023 again in 2024. So all the bottom liquidity to me looks like it's been taken out, and we're holding above previous all-time highs within this trading range that we just built, which is quite often a positive sign. I suspect that we're going to get some pretty big moves here. If we do, again, that's contingent on the idea that I am correct here, that we are seeing an SOS and a backup phase. So the next little bit is crucial. There's some other super useful aligning data here as well. People kept calling for the stock market to break down. I've been one of the few people who said consistently, I think we're going to witness a market melt up basically since 2023. The reason I said this is just some really horrible data within the markets that leads me to believe that they have no other choice but just to print capital. It's not a great place that we're in. There's some pretty devastating effects, but after witnessing this last little bit of an election period, I'm quite hopeful. I'm a big fan of RFK Jr. I like Tulsi Gabbard. She seems sweet. Trump at the moment has put some really intelligent people around him. RFK gives me a lot of hope, especially because I love scientific and data research. I'm highly data driven, and RFK has been one of the most astute data driven characters that I've ever come across. Children's Health Defense and the work that he does there is fucking phenomenal. They have an amazing track record of taking multi-billion-dollar corporations to task and schooling them scientifically, case after case after case. I would not bet against RFK when it comes to scientific literature and his track record for breaking stuff apart. So I think we're going to continue to see a market melt up. I don't think there's too much other choice. It's really the dollar that's dead, not the market. The US stock market is the most valuable thing about the US. The dollar could die, and if you have a strong, innovative culture that moves into the US, like even I would consider moving to the US now. If all these liberals want to leave, I would move there. It looks like a great place. If they dropped income taxes and made it like, it would be one of the most badass places to go and do work. Network capital would flood there, intellectual capital would flood there, real fucking dollars would flood there. So I think we're witnessing something unique. Normally, a lot of people, again, would think that this would be a falling wedge. You'd be looking for a breakdown to the downside. I heard many commentators talking about this. I've consistently stood by I think we're going to see a market melt up because it's the most valuable part of the American society is its market and its capital in the minds of the people that like to build free market ideas. So if they put that into position, oh my God, up and out for the S&P 500 too, because the dollar is basically worthless. Around the world, they're going to do the same things. They're going to print. They can only either raise interest rates or stop printing, or print more and lower interest rates. They have no other levers to pull. And we just saw China with the data I looked at the previous week, where they had printed over 11 trillion won, which is equivalent to $1 trillion US that came out. So something to keep an eye on. Anyways, short little video. Hope you guys all enjoyed this deal with the Arcane Bear. We're signing off, and we'll see you again on the next episode.